In the early months of 1841, a man who embodied the spirit of early America stepped into the highest office in our land. A celebrated war hero and patriot, he rose to prominence as a symbol of courage and resilience in a rapidly changing nation. His story was one of triumph, ambition, and a life shaped by the rugged challenges of the frontier, but no one could foresee how his death would come. But first, if you're a fan of profound, historic, and timeless stories told in captivating detail, welcome to Heathstory. We upload twice a week, so if that sounds good to you, be sure to like and subscribe. Now let's get into it. On a sprawling Virginia estate surrounded by fields and the distant hum of a growing nation, a young boy named William Henry Harrison dreamed of a life of adventure. Life in the 1770s and 80s was defined by change and uncertainty. America had just won its independence, and Harrison's generation was the very first to grow up in a nation free from the king, yet still trying to figure out its own destiny. The Virginia countryside was a place of sprawling farms, thundering horses, and vast, untamed land that seemed to stretch on forever. At the time, Virginia's population numbered around 500,000, a mix of wealthy landowners, enslaved laborers, and hardworking settlers carving out their own futures. For young William, the legacy of his father, Benjamin Harrison V, loomed very large. As a signer of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin had helped shape the country's foundation. William felt both inspired and a little burdened by the expectation to leave his own mark. He roamed the fields of the family estate, imagining what role he might play in this new, uncharted America. Medicine initially captivated him, but the restless energy of the frontier and the opportunities of a rapidly growing nation called to him. These dreams would soon lead him down a path no one, not even himself, could have ever predicted. Initially enrolled in medical school in Philadelphia, Harrison's passion for medicine faltered. After his father's death, financial struggles forced him to abandon his studies. Seeking a brand new direction, Harrison joined the Army at the age of 18, where his discipline and leadership skills quickly distinguished him. His success in the military caught the attention of national leaders, and in 1801, at the age of 28, he was appointed governor of the Indiana Territory by our nation's second president, John Adams. It was a vast and very challenging region, and Harrison's appointment marked a brand new chapter in his life as a leader of the frontier. The night was pitch black, the air heavy with the tension of what was to come. William Henry Harrison stood among his men, their campfires casting flickering shadows on very tired faces. The damp chill of the night seeped into his boots, and the distant sound of drums echoed through the forest, heightening all this tension. He could hear the faint rustle of movement in the darkness. The enemy was close. After a decade of military training and leadership, Harrison had prepared for this very moment, but nothing could erase the weight of responsibility that was pressing on him. He thought of the settlers whose safety depended on his success, and of native leader Tecumseh's coalition, united by a vision to protect their lands. When the attack came, it was swift and ferocious. Arrows whistled through the air, and war cries pierced the silence. Harrison shouted orders, his voice cutting through the chaos as he rallied his troops to hold the line. He thought of the settlers counting on him, the faces of those who had already lost so much, and he fought to steady his resolve amid the fierceness of battle. The night was a blur of firelight and smoke, men fighting with a desperate resolve. Harrison's heart pounded as he moved through the fray, his mind racing to anticipate the enemy's next move. By dawn, the battlefield was silent, the cost of victory all too evident. Harrison's leadership had held firm, but he couldn't shake the images of the fallen. The victory at Tippecanoe, fought near present-day battleground Indiana, propelled him to national prominence. Yet as he surveyed the aftermath, he knew this triumph came at a very great cost. The devastation had shattered native resistance in the region, opening the door for further expansion, a legacy that would weigh very heavily on history. Harrison's military fame launched his political career. By 1836, he was the Whig Party's presidential nominee, though he lost to Martin Van Buren. The Whigs had emerged as sort of the counterparty to the new Democratic Party. But 4 years later, the economic depression that had gripped the nation gave William Henry Harrison yet another shot at the White House. The Whigs capitalized on his frontier image, portraying him as a very humble soldier who drank hard cider in a log cabin despite his aristocratic roots. Tippecanoe and Tyler Too became the rallying cry for Harrison and his running mate John Tyler. The presidential campaign was a masterclass in populism, drawing massive crowds and reinvigorating voter enthusiasm. Harrison won this election by a landslide, defeating Van Buren and becoming the 9th president of the United States, something his father, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, could have never dreamed possible in his time. March 4th, 1841, dawned cold and blustery in Washington, D.C. The biting wind stung William Henry Harrison's face as he approached the U.S. Capitol, his breath visible in the frigid air. At 68 years old now, he was the oldest president ever elected up to that time, a fact that added to the significance of this historic day. Very determined to project strength and vitality, Harrison ignored advice to wear an overcoat or a hat. As he stood before the gathered crowd, Harrison took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. This was his moment. His inaugural speech began confidently, his voice clear and steady despite the cold. "I contend that the strongest of all governments is that which is most free," he declared, a statement that encapsulated his vision for the nation. The 68-year-old Harrison stood there for nearly 2 hours, delivering the longest inaugural address in American history. Every word a testament to his resolve to lead a divided nation. But as he concluded and descended from the platform, he felt a chill, not just from the weather, but from the exertion. A sense of unease crept in, though he quickly dismissed it. There was no time for weakness. Shortly after the ceremony, Harrison developed a cold. Initially dismissed as minor, the illness worsened, progressing to pneumonia. His doctors employed the crude and often deadly treatments of the time: bloodletting, heated plasters, and opium. None of it worked. For 30 days, Harrison's condition deteriorated. As he lay in bed, struggling to breathe, his mind often wondered, did the cold from Inauguration Day seal his fate? Was he destined to leave his mark in such a fleeting manner? He thought of his family, the laughter of his grandchildren, the dreams he still carried for this new young nation that he had vowed to lead, and the legacy that he might have built if given time. The doctors moved around him, their crude and often deadly treatments offering very little comfort. Each passing day felt heavier, his strength slipping further away. Outside, the nation watched anxiously, the promise of his presidency fading with every moment. On April 4th, 1841, William Henry Harrison took his last breath. The man who had once stood as a symbol of resilience and hope now became a sobering reminder of how swiftly even the brightest flames can be extinguished. He had served just 1 month as president. His death thrust the country in uncharted waters. The Constitution provided no clear guidance on presidential succession, leaving John Tyler to exert his right to the office. This precedent would shape the nation's understanding of executive power for generations to come. The man who had stood before the nation as a symbol of triumph and strength and vision became a stark reminder of life's fragility and the unpredictable turns of fate. William Henry Harrison's presidency lasted a mere 30 days, but his story endures as one of ambition, resilience, and the fragility of human plans. And with that, we'll leave you with this image of William Henry Harrison on his deathbed, an illustration that captures the quiet solemnity of his final moments. His frail form lay surrounded by the shadows of the room, a stark contrast to the resolute leader who had stood proudly just weeks before. The echoes of his campaign song, Tippecanoe and Tyler Too, now fading, replaced by the solemn toll of a bell.
If you like profound, historic, and timeless stories, check out Heathstory. New episodes twice weekly only on the Jim Heath channel. Subscribe and like now, and we'll see you next time.